What is AWS Identity Federation? 4. Simplified user access. Imagine logging into multiple cloud services with just one set of credentials. That's what AWS Identity Federation makes possible. It helps organizations manage user access without creating separate accounts in Amazon Web Services. Instead, it trusts external identity providers like corporate directories or social login systems. When users sign in through their existing system, they get temporary security credentials from AWS. These credentials let them access resources based on roles assigned in AWS Identity and Access Management. The main goal here is to make managing user identities easier. Instead of maintaining multiple user accounts across different systems, you centralize credentials in one place. For example, if your company uses Active Directory or SAML 2.0 systems, you can connect these to AWS. When a user logs in with their usual credentials, they are redirected to their identity provider for authentication. Once verified, the identity provider sends a token or assertion back to AWS confirming who they are. AWS then grants temporary access based on predefined roles. These roles specify what resources the user can access and what actions they can perform. This process is straightforward. First, you set up trust between AWS and your identity provider. You do this in the AWS Identity and Access Management console using SAML metadata or OpenID Connect configurations. Next, you create roles in AWS that define permissions for federated users. When someone tries to access AWS, they are redirected to authenticate with their identity provider. After successful login, the provider sends a token to AWS. AWS then verifies the token and issues temporary credentials, which are valid for a limited time. Usually, these credentials last for an hour or so, making access both secure and flexible. From a cloud infrastructure point of view, Federation simplifies user management. It reduces the need to create and manage long-term credentials like access keys or passwords in AWS. This is especially helpful in hybrid environments where some resources are on-premises and others are in the cloud. Federation also helps enforce consistent security policies across all platforms. Users no longer need to remember multiple passwords, and administrators can control access centrally. In enterprise setups, Federation supports cross-account access. For example, users from one AWS account can access resources in another account by assuming roles. This setup requires trust relationships between accounts but allows flexible resource sharing. For DevOps teams, Federation is a big time saver. Instead of embedding long-term access keys in automation scripts, they can assume roles through OpenID Connect providers like GitHub Actions. This way, credentials are short-lived, reducing security risks. Security is important here. Federation introduces a single point of failure if roles are overpermissioned. If a role gets compromised, all users assuming that role could gain excessive access. That's why AWS recommends following the least privilege principle, giving only the permissions needed. Regular audits and monitoring help catch unusual activity. Enabling multi-factor authentication adds an extra layer of security for federated users. AWS supports two main federation methods. IAM Identity Center Federation is designed for managing workforce access across multiple accounts. It supports SAML 2.0, Active Directory, and its own directory service. Traditional federation works well for single accounts or machine-to-machine access, supporting SAML 2.0 and OpenID Connect. You can also set up cross-account federation, where users from one account assume roles in another, enabling flexible access across your AWS infrastructure. For teams managing infrastructure as code, Federation simplifies automation. Instead of storing long-term access keys in pipelines, they can assume federated roles through providers like GitHub or GitLab. This approach keeps credentials short-lived and makes auditing easier. Overall, Federation aligns with best practices for cloud security by reducing credential sprawl and centralizing identity management. When implemented carefully, it becomes a key part of a secure, scalable AWS environment.